Hey guys, welcome back. So today we're going to talk a little bit about the SAW and a little bit about the IAR, or the Infantry Automatic Rifle, that was adopted by the United States Marine Corps in 2008. Going back to 1984, the U.S. military adopted the SAW, the Squad Automatic Weapon, and M249 was the numerical designation for the nomenclature of the weapon. And what the U.S. military was seeking to do was to reduce the weight of the crew-served weapons. Before that, we were using a general-purpose machine gun like the M60, which was even bigger and heavier than the SAW. And they're looking to find something that was lighter weight that could be used in the same role as a general-purpose machine gun, but could be more easily carried by the individual soldier. That led to the development of the FN SAW, and it went into service again in 1984 in chambers 5.56 versus 7.62x51 of the M60 that preceded it. This gun still weighs about 18 pounds empty. When you get it loaded up, it can weigh well over 20 pounds. So even though it's lighter than a standard general purpose machine gun in 30 caliber, the SAW is still kind of a big, clumsy weapon that would later be modified even more. There would be paratrooper versions with collapsible stocks and shorter barrels. They went even further, trying to lighten this weapon. Well, it's also interesting to note that the Marines decided, maybe we don't want a belt-fed weapon anymore. Maybe we want a magazine-fed weapon, much like what the Russians did when they adopted the RPK. If you go back to Russian military doctrine, they had the RPD, belt-fed 7.62x39 machine guns, which they gave up in favor of the RPK, which is an AK with a longer barrel, bipod, and was fed from magazines. And that was the kind of the direction the Marine Corps was thinking. So that's what we're going to get into in today's video. We're going to start off shooting the original configuration of the M249 SAW, and we're going to fire it with some belted ammunition, and then we'll fire it with a magazine, because that is a key component to another reason why the SAW was adopted, and that leads into the IAR. So let's run this belt out of this bad boy at our challenge target at 100 yards. All right, and so she's empty. When she's empty, you flip the feed tray up, clear out the remaining links, make sure that the weapon is clear. This one fires from a closed bolt with a hammer that's very much, you'll see people call it a striker or a hammer. When I pull the trigger, you'll see the striker go home. Actually, it's already been fired. But yeah, now we can feed it from the magazine. You can charge the weapon. You can see when I pull it back, there's a little striker assembly inside there. When I pull the trigger, how it goes home. All right, but this weapon, just like its full auto counterpart, this would normally fire from an open bolt. This is a closed bolt conversion by FN. You can stick the magazine into the side of the weapon and charge it. And it can run magazines as well. All right, so all clear. So this weapon was really quite forward-thinking for its age, or its time, being able to fire either from magazines or belts. The magazines would be used in emergency situations, which an infantryman could toss a magazine to the machine gunner and keep his gun up and running so he could keep that suppressive fire going. All right, so let's take a look at what the Marines were considering as an option for the IAR program. This is really interesting, and it's manufactured by Colt. We'd like to thank our friends over at Big Daddy Unlimited for helping to support this video and other videos that we produce. Guys, if you would like to support us here at the Military Arms channel, please swing by and check out Big Daddy Unlimited. You can do that by going by militaryarms.org, checking out that big yellow link at the very top of the page, clicking it, and becoming a member for just 99 cents. If you would like to stay a member going forward, you can do so for 20% off using that link, which is just $7.99 a month. And what is BDU? Well, basically think of it as the Sam's Club of the online world. So again, please swing by and check out Big Daddy Unlimited. This is the Colt 6940 IAR submission that would have been submitted to the United States Marine Corps for consideration. It would be one of several different rifles that would be submitted. There were two versions of this rifle that Colt would ultimately submit. There was this gun, then there was a collaborative effort between Colt and Knights Armament, which was based off this basic design that they would submit as well. Then you had a submission from FN, and finally a submission from H&K. The rifle that I have here is the Colt Submission without Knight's Armaments influence, and we'll kind of go over the features of it. Let's start at the front end to move our way to the rear. We have a heavy profile 16.1 inch barrel, so it's going to be slightly longer than the 14.5 inch barrel of the M4 rifle that the Marines were using at the time of adoption. Well, actually, I think in 2008, when this thing went into service, they were still using A4s, but ultimately the Marine Corps would go to the M4 rifle. Out here on the end of the 16.1 inch barrel, heavy barrel, we have a standard A2 type muzzle device. Coming back, we have a bayonet lug, so now you have the capability of doing a bayonet charge with your infantry automatic rifle. Here we have the folding Colt front sight, which is adjustable for elevation. You can fold the sight away and use it with optics, like I have the Trijicon on here right now. The Marines like the RCO, a version of the Trijicon optic. Then we get into the heat sink, and this is where this gun really shines. When it comes to meeting the specifics of the contract set forth originally by the Marine Corps, this gun nails it. So you have that heavy barrel, you have an aluminum heat sink that is very much like an air-cooled motorcycle motor from back in the day. It has fins on it. And so this is in close proximity to the actual heavy barrel, and it's going to absorb that heat, whisk it away from the barrel. And then we have outside of that another aluminum shield that would be used to shield the soldiers or the Marines' hands from the heat that's being absorbed by this internal radiator looking thing. And at the bottom of this, we have a 1913 rail and this grip pod. So this would be used to also mitigate any heat that this system would generate and whisk away from the barrel to keep the Marine's hand safe from being burned. Moving back up towards the top, we have a monolithic type upper. So you have the upper, and then as it comes out here to this rail section on top, it's all one piece. The bottom half can be unbolted and taken off, exposing the heat sink. But this, where my fingers are running, are all one piece with the upper receiver of the gun. Underneath there, we have a direct gas impingement gas system. Coming back, this is where it gets into pretty much normal M16 territory. We have a standard bolt and carrier assembly in there, standard lower with basic M16 fire controls, ping pong paddle, bolt release, magazine release over here. Nothing back in this area has changed much. They did specify a MAWTEC sight on the Colt Submission. The Knight's Armament collaborative submission would have a CAC rear sight. The CAC submission would also have a different heat dispersion mechanism up here. It'd be different than what Colt submitted on its own. Back here, we have the T-handle, which has this enlarged lever to make it easier to operate. Standard style buffer tube back here, castle nut that's staked in place, and then we have this Veltor E-style clubfoot stock that would be used much like you would an RPK, right? So it's adjustable for length of pull, so the Marine can get it to the right length of pull for themselves. You have storage compartments back here, and it has this nice slope to it that actually is quite comfortable to the shooter's cheek. Now the Marines, again, would more than likely use the weapon with the RCO, which is a version of the ACOG, which I have on here now. So that pretty much breaks down what the Colt submission was. And once again, I want to stress the fact that Colt really nailed it. And what's odd is that the H&K rifle that actually won the contract didn't have any of this heat mitigation technology out there. It just had a regular old aluminum pick rail and a barrel. And that kind of leads into a conspiracy theory that perhaps the Marines weren't actually looking for this gun, even though this is what they specified, and Colt beautifully met those specifications. But perhaps the Marines were looking to replace their infantry rifle and to replace it with the H&K. It's an interesting concept. All right, let's do a little bit of shooting with the Colt. Again, it loads just like a standard M16, M4, A4, and the genius behind this, again, what's old is new again, is the fact that the machine gunner has the capability of swapping magazines with the Marines around him so they can keep the machine gun up and running. You don't have to link ammunition and have special requirements, but with the SAW, you still had the M16 magazine capabilities, although it was less than ideal. All right, so let's start off shooting a little bit at 100 yards here. And what is really incredible about this system is it's perfectly tuned. It's such a gentle recoiling system that on full auto, it would be a pure pleasure to shoot. It is just smooth as silk. Walk it out to 200 here. Easily score hits all the way out to 500 meters. The accuracy of the weapon is preserved despite the fact we have all this going on out here on the front of the weapon. It's still going to shoot just as good as a standard A4 M16 with an ACOG on it. Colt really knocked it out of the park when you take a look at all things and consider them and take a look at the specifications again set forth by the Marine Corps. So we've looked at the Colt submission. This is as close as we're going to get with the HK submission because I don't have access to the actual M27 that was ultimately adopted by the Marine Corps, but this is going to get us close for the sake of conversation and comparison. Go ahead and set the Colt aside, and let's take a look at this MR556A1, which is very similar to the M27 ultimately adopted by the United States Marine Corps. This weapon maintain out, of course, the barrel profile and the handguard, and some other minor details are going to be slightly different with the actual M27 versus the MR556A1. But again, I understand that. So in the comment section, when you guys go, well, that's not quite the same, I know, okay? But this is going to get us pretty close. The M27 still used a quad rail aluminum handguard over a standard barrel. So none of the heat mitigation technology incorporated into the Colt submission was introduced into the H&K submission. What the H&K has that the Colt does not have is a gas piston. And Jason and I were just talking about this, and perhaps this is one of the reasons the Marines decided to go with the M27 or the H&K is because it uses a gas piston versus direct gas impingement. Pretty much all modern machine guns use a gas piston. The USM60 is a gas piston driven gun. The M249 SAW is gas piston driven. The M240 Bravo, gas piston driven. So perhaps that's what the Marines were thinking. They just wanted to get away from DI and they would overlook the other shortcomings of the H&K submission, that being no real heat mitigation going on with the barrel. So only the Marines could tell us that. But if you take a look, everything back here, again, with the H&K is going to be pretty much standard M16 fare. H&K did its own little quirky things, of course, which makes it not 100% compatible with U.S. military M16s, but it's, for the most part, an M16 right down to the forward assist, the fire controls, magazine release, and the ping pong paddle on the left-hand side of the receiver. They would have used an HK style stock, which is going to give you about the same comfort level as the Voltor stock on the Colt submission. This isn't the actual stock, obviously. This is the MR556A1 stock. So the biggest differences being no heat mitigation and gas piston versus direct gas impingement. The HK, of course, would maintain accuracy. I have no doubt that the M27 is a very accurate rifle. The Colt rifle tips the scales at just under 10 pounds, and the H&K is going to be about the same, keeping in mind the requirement said that the guns had to be less than 12.5 pounds with their grip pod in place and the rear sight. So both these rifles are well underneath 12 pounds. But there's another thing that's interesting about the HK style firearms is that it's piston driven, but it also has a more abrupt recoil impulse than the direct gas impingement gun, where that Colt, I feel, would just be steady smooth on full auto. When you shoot the MR556A1, the piston, when it contacts that carrier and violently whacks it and starts it moving rearward, you can feel that You can definitely feel that, and it's going to make the gun move more under recoil. It's not nearly as smooth as a direct gas impingement gun. So the H&K, a very accurate weapon system, and so I would imagine the M27 maintains that high level of accuracy. So that plays into, once again, were the Marines just looking to adopt a 416 type weapon, and they just kind of went through back channels and found funding by looking at an M249 replacement? Because again, today, right now, the M27, which was originally deployed as a squad automatic type firearm, is now being issued to 0311 riflemen as their primary infantry weapon. So I'll let you guys think about that, and I look forward to reading your comments down below. Do you think the Marines pulled a fast one and they just wanted to adopt the 416 like France and other nations? Here's the saw sitting next to the Colt IAR submission. This rifle is roughly half the weight of the saw, and it's not going to have the sustained fire capabilities of the saw. The saw maintains the ability to obviously remove the barrel quickly, and so when you get a barrel hot, you can throw another barrel in the gun, keep it running longer. You're going to give that up with weapon systems like this, like the RPK and the M27, or even in the Colt submission. So you're going to have to let the rifles cool, and you're not going to be able to run them as hard as you could a belt fed. But again, it's half the weight and uses the same magazines as the rest of the Marines around the machine gunner. So it certainly makes sense conceptually. Let's go ahead and set this saw aside. So in the end, I think this gun should have won the contract. Now, if the Marines are trying to pull a fast one and they really just wanted the 416, well, then I understand why they didn't choose this and they chose the 416 or a variation thereof. But this gun really checks all the boxes basically set forth by the Marines for this type of a weapon system. And so if it's to be used in that capacity, I think this gun shines over the H&K option. But, you know, in the end, the military is going to pick what the military wants. So guys, while filming this video today, we found out that a friend of ours that we met through Hero Hunt, which is a veterans charity organization that we support, and we're going to be going on a hunt here in Texas with another veteran here in the next few weeks, and we'll bring the video camera along and bring you guys along on that hunt. Our friend Corey, we just found out, passed away, and Corey, we're going to miss you, brother. He was a fireman in California, and it was a real pleasure hunting with Corey. He was a big fan of the channel, and you're going to be sorely missed, brother. All right, guys, here we go. These are for you, Corey.